Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Bienvenue to Le Monde. Welcome to the Pearson Center podcast. We are beyond thrilled today to have what I consider one of the greatest Canadians, Mark Critch, actor and author now, written a trilogy of books, who's joining us to talk about his new book, Sorry Not Sorry, which is an unapologetic look at what makes Canada worth fighting for. So, welcome, Mark. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge our sustaining sponsors who keep the Pearson Centre going all year long. That would be a MAPCO, Ontario's professional employees, CBTU, the Canadian Building Trades Union, NWMO, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, TikTok Canada, the Cannabis Council of Canada, Bruce Power, Sandstone Group, and Fasken. And our media sponsor is National Newswatch, Spark, North Star. So thank you to all of them for all you do to keep us going all year long. And I would also, before we begin, like to acknowledge that I am coming to you from the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Algonquin people, with whom we continue our journey of reconciliation. So with that, I will turn it over to our wonderful chair and CEO, Pam Damoff, who will begin the interview, and Pam and I will go back and forth as we get to chat with Mark today. So welcome.
Thanks a million,
Yeah.
Kevin. And Mark, thank you so much for joining us. This is really fun to get the opportunity to chat with you. I know, and I went to your book launch in Toronto, which was a lot of fun. But you talked about what inspired you to write this book, and I wondered if you could just tell us what made you to put pen to paper and write this book, celebrating our great country.
Well, yeah, I was actually working on a different book. I was working on what was actually going to be a novel set in Newfoundland during the Second World War. And as I was writing that, I seemed to keep hearing Mr. Trump in the background on the news talking about the 51st state. And I'd sort of flinch and go, oh, man. And I normally, when 22 Minutes is on there, I'm able to, I have a great soapbox to get out all of my thoughts, but we were in hiatus and Son of a Critch hadn't started filming yet, the other show I do. So I just went back to work, typing and working away. And then I kept hearing about, Governor Trudeau, quite frank, and it would really get to me. And I contacted the folks at Penguin Random House, who are my publishers. And I said, "Dude, people ever switch stream midway through writing a book?" And they said, "No, never." And I was like, "Okay, great, cool." And I went back to it. And then I just wrote him back and said, "Look, I have all these thoughts and I wonder if I could do this and get this out." And of course, a book like this, where it's so topical, you want to get it out as quickly as possible. So I started writing towards the end of April. I had all my drafts done by Canada Day. I passed it in the 100% on Canada Day, and they went right to print because I was writing as I went, passing in chapters to try and, as I went, to try and get it in line for production for this Christmas launch. And yeah, so I was muttering, wandering around the house, talking to myself about how frustrated I was, and I thought other people must be feeling the same way. So it'd be sometimes if you can laugh at something, it doesn't really have control over you. So I thought it'd be something for us to come together and kind of share a chuckle with.
Well, you do that all the time on This Hour Has 22
Yeah.
Minutes, right?
Yeah.
A great Canadian show, one of many. You actually have a whole chapter dedicated to Canadian content, both, The Friendly Giant, The Littlest Hobo, who I was very proud when I was a little girl. The Littlest Hobo came to the Western Fair, and I got an autographed copy of London and didn't realize till I was a little bit older that dogs don't actually sign in cursive writing.
That's amazing, though. Wow.
But even shows now like This Hour, Son of a Critch, I love shows like Sorta that probably wouldn't get made anywhere else, to be honest with you. How important is that Canadian content to the culture here in Canada? Because I think we sometimes take it for granted.
We do take it for granted, and I think it's always been important because we live next to a house that plays really loud music. Our neighbors play their music all day and night, really loud, with their windows open. So it's hard to even think over all that noise. And we part of this whole thing about losing our sovereignty. I think Mr. Trump just thought, people would be rushing over the border to be saved from our snowy socialism, and to dare be, a part of the United States. But we definitely have our own culture, and a big part of that was, I think, uh, with Canadian content regulations, we would not only see ourselves reflected coast to coast to coast, but our country is so big, and Canadians don't often travel within our own country that much, that it kind of falls to artists many times to kind of link us together and knit us together, and show us who the other Canadians are and give us a sense of that country. And when it comes to music, when I was growing up, we had Much Music, and all these videos. And if you wanted to see the Michael Jackson Thriller video, you had to watch a couple of CanCon videos of bands like Glass Tiger and different people like that, or Tragically Hip, and when presented alongside the big American things, you realize, wow, this is just as good or better. And I think we learn a lot about ourselves in doing that. I mean, the final Tragically Hip concert was amazing because you talk about Canadian content. This is this band had great Canadian success, kind of struggled a bit in the States, but they're having this last concert, and every TV set and every radio across the country was listening to this one unifying moment, which doesn't happen that much anymore. But when I was a kid, you were growing up and everyone knew the Mr. Dress Up and everyone knew Friendly Giant. And we had our own kind of kitchen table that we'd gather around and as a country. And we had these things that linked us together and reflected ourselves to each other. Now, with things so splintered, it's much more difficult. But I think before, broadcasters would set the table, and now Canadians are setting the table by what gets out there in feeds. What we share is the thing that we all will eventually see and rally around. So it's still there in a different form, but it's incredibly important for us to our artists really do show us who we are as Canadians.
Kevin, I know you wanted to ask a few questions. Maybe I'll turn it over to you for a bit.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Pam. Yeah, I'm eager to jump in here. I think it's a wonderful book, Mark. I think it's like an examination of the Canadian psyche, if I will. I mean, different chapters go into maybe some of our common neuroses, which I think is a good and I think it's great that you wrote it. I do consider you one of the greatest Canadians. I think it's
You're too
great
kind.
that the greatest Canadian comes from the newest province, and that's what I kind of want to focus on is you do mention that you're a first generation Canadian because of course your father lived in a time when Newfoundland was under a different arrangement and at one point was actually its own country and then
Yeah.
directly ruled from Great Britain. I never thought I'm from Calgary, I'm from Alberta. We've had our fringe separatists, always, and I never thought that there'd be a time when I'd seriously have to address these people, they'd be part of the political debate. But here we are today in Alberta. And of course, we've lived with the Quebec situation a long time. Someone once said to me that, when it comes to the idea of having a country, that's a dream, and you'll never destroy a dream. So the fact that Newfoundland had its own country and then gave that up for very good reasons of economy. It probably had a positive economic impact on Newfoundland and Newfoundlanders. But I just wanted to get your take on where are Newfoundlanders and Labradorians broadly today when it comes to their attachment to Canada and what do you think about all that?
Well, my father's generation was interesting because Dad was of an age where he actually covered Confederation with Canada for the Daily News newspaper.
Mhm.
So he was very much for Confederation. At the time it was to stay the course or to have economic union with the United States, which isn't really something the United States wanted, but it was on the ballot anyway. And of course, Confederation with Canada. And it's interesting because that was something where giving up your nationhood. I mean, I don't know if a lot of Canadians realize, but we had our own prime minister, we have our own stamps, we had our own passport, we had our own currency, and our own ode. We had, which is still sung here, and we gave a lot up in the Great War. We have a war memorial here in Newfoundland and Labrador, which is a national war memorial, and it's very interesting because Memorial Day for us is July 1st, which is Canada Day for everybody else. In the morning, we gather at the War Memorial and solemnly respect those who gave their lives for a different flag. And then at noon, we lay down our wreaths and we go fire up the grill and celebrate Canada Day. So
Pick
it's
up your
still,
bottles. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So it's still it's still there, and it's still a scar, but it's a scar I think that's healed over a lot of ways for that. There's generations now grown up only ever knowing their life as a Canadian. There's a romantic thing in the arts that has always been there, some songs of separation and things like that. But I always say, like, there'd be these songs like Come Near at Your Peril, Canadian Wolf, all about,
Right.
uh, but, and then on the back of those albums would always be sponsored by Canada Council, SOCAN, so I always found that interesting. But
Yeah.
I think now most young people certainly identify as Canadians. Even myself, like growing up and into my 20s and 30s and 40s, if you asked me where I was from, I'd say Newfoundland. I don't think I ever said Canada, not as a smack to Canada, but it's just we didn't really have much of a connection to. We're an island. We
Yeah.
And before Confederation, there wasn't really much. You didn't. The people knew Americans very well. They didn't know Canadians very well. But now over time, I mean, I certainly think of myself as a Canadian because I've had the great honor through my career that a lot of Canadians don't get of being able to travel this country. I've been able to meet Canadians in every province and territory and see the incredible things that this country has to offer. And our greatest resource isn't oil or the fishery or lumber, it's people. And we're known around the world for the kindness and the welcoming nature of our people. And that's really in the end is what we need to protect, I think, and support. And I think what's amazing about Mr. Trump is he sort of joked at first and then kind of got a bit serious about taking over a sovereign nation. But if anything, he's probably brought us closer together and made us probably see Canadians some way, and for many for the first time, the true value of this place, in a patriotic way, which we're not big flag wavers. But I think, yeah, people here in Newfoundland and Labrador, certainly now, I think the majority of them would think of themselves happily as Canadians.
Good. And I think a lot of Quebecers, I was surprised, seemed to see the value of Canada when the alternative was, falling under Donald Trump's, giant blanket.
Yeah, and you see, Quebec at the table with Alberta talking about different things. It's fascinating. And right now, we're at a big nation building project here in Newfoundland, Labrador, and Quebec is another huge, big hydro deal to power to. I mean, a big scar for Newfoundland, Labrador was this Churchill Falls hydro deal done by Mr. Smallwood early on for a few jobs, and we're paying pennies on the dollar for Quebec was paying for their power. Now that's being renegotiated, and I think if done properly, which it looks like it will be, that's really something I think that will heal a lot of wounds for a lot of people of a certain age. That's great to see. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to be working together and see each other not as rivals, but as part of the same country.
That's right. I mean, maybe Donald Trump helped push it together. Maybe,
100%.
maybe he deserves that FIFA Peace Prize for bringing Canada together at least.
I think you should get the Order of Canada, the first one
right.
given to an American. Should go to Donald Trump. Thank you, Donald, for being.
I heard Chrétien tell you that a convicted criminal is not allowed to have it, right?
That's right. That's what he said. A convicted criminal can't have it. Yeah.
Back to you, Pam. Go ahead. You have a question?
So I'm a big Terry Foxer, and I have been for a long time, and really proud to have been able to do work on Terry when I was an MP. Getting Terry on the $5 bill was one that you mentioned in the book. And in fact, when we did that, I actually had a call with Daryl Fox, Terry's brother, to say, when Terry started, it was $1 per Canadian. By the time the bill comes out, it should be a $5 for every Canadian. Yeah. And you mentioned that in your book, actually, Mark. And you also talked about it during the convoy, how Terry actually led a convoy of pro-science people and continues to draw people to him. I'm just curious, how important is Terry to our Canadian identity? And why do you think he still resonates with Canadians the way that he does?
Well, it's something interesting because there's a chapter in there as well about monuments and stuff and memorials and they have in the States, they have the big giant Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument and all these giant things to politicians. And in Canada, I always say we have things like the Sudbury Nickel, which is kind of created on the city limits by this guy that the council thought was a bit of a nutter and who they then rallied around. And it's all about we celebrate the not really the oddballs, but the unique Canadians who are a little bit outside of the norm, who communities end up rallying around. And I remember when I was a little kid, I mean, I'm 51 now, so it may have been the second grade or first grade or something. But I remember Terry coming here and starting the Marathon of Hope and dipping his foot in the harbor where there's now a great statue to him. And I remember at the time it starting off slow, and I remember it gathering from place to place. The more you'd see on the news, you're sitting there with your parents, and this guy is it's becoming this thing where it's he's doing it. There's people, walking alongside him. There's people meeting him everywhere, and it really one of those moments that really unified our nation and showed that we're a big country, but we're a small country, and then showing this unsurmountable disease that this one person is like, well, I'm going to try, and giving that hope to so many Canadians for decades and decades. So I think that he is, he's somebody that, and that's what Canadians honor, and that's what gives us our identity. And it's not necessarily the big political figures or the war heroes. It's people like Terry, and I think Terry's the greatest example of that. And there's a few Canadians that no Canadian can argue against, and he's one of those. And not be for winning a war, not for winning an election, but for kindness. And I think that that's a great thing for a country to celebrate.
Yeah, me too. I often say to kids when I talk to them, Terry was, embodies everything that we want to be as Canadians, including being very humble, but he could also be really stubborn when he needed to be, which is what we need to do right now, is be stubborn, right? But that humbleness, but don't push him too far, because he would push back, right?
Absolutely. I think something else too you take from Terry too is kind of playing the long game, like seeing, and that's something we have to do now. It is tough right now, and it will be hard, and people will lose some jobs, and it is going to be very difficult, and there'll be growing pains. But this country will come out much stronger in the years ahead than it ever has been if we stick together. So, and if we finish it, and that's what we have to do, and we can take great inspiration from Terry for that. Never quitting.
Kevin, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah. You have a chapter in the book called I Want My Flag Back.
Yeah.
And I think it broadly refers to the feeling I had when I certainly saw the convoy. I mean, I live in Ottawa. I went down and toured the convoy. I think I did have that sphincter moment too, whenever I saw the flag after that, saying, okay, is that person, my kind of Canadian, or is it someone who's has very different views from me. Initially I felt the same way. Is why have they taken the flag? We need to take it back. And I sort of came to the conclusion later that no, I'd rather they flew that flag than some other flags, an American flag or some other flag, or they could have. And that isn't it good that even though we disagree, even though there's a wide range of political opinions in Canada, are we all at least agreed that Canada is the realm in which we want to live and work and maybe do different directions? So I finally decided, well, maybe it's okay if that flag. But I wanted to hear your thoughts, because I certainly noticed what you noticed in the book, which is that this past year I've seen an explosion of flags. You go and people put it in their houses, their garages. You talk about putting a flag out in your place, and just what the flag means to you generally. You tell the whole story of the flag. You tell how we got it with the flag debate, and just what you think the flag means to you. And I want to hear your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, well, I say in there too somewhere, I think that, but I think it's wonderful that we have a country that can have such a fragile icon as a leaf,
right.
And it takes a lot of confidence to have a leaf as your symbol, And I think it's their flag too when you talk about the convoy, and it is their right to wave it. And when I saw them kind of draping themselves in it and waving it and taking ownership of it, and even in some cases they were drawing swastikas on it, But I thought I kind of had that feeling of like the one who got away, that the flag was maybe, it's like a gal that you see walking down the street after you break up with another guy, and you're like, what did I do? Oh no, she's happy with him. Oh no, and you realize you don't know what you got till it's gone.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of Canadians were like that in the moment, but still probably kind of let it go. Canadians have never wrapped themselves in the flag per se as much. Be proudly Canadian, but not in that same USA Stars and Stripes way. But when you tell people that they're not a real country, and when call your prime minister a governor, boy, do people ever want to
Wake up.
run something up a flagpole and say, now hang on a minute, mister, she's with me. you know and I think that's the first time in my life when I really, I mean, and as I say, like, we grew up, the Union Jack was the flag in Newfoundland before Confederation, and before that we had a pink, white, and green
Mhm.
Republic flag that was flown. And you know the Canadian flag, you always saw it alongside the Newfoundland flag. It was there, but it didn't necessarily, it didn't have the same connection and
And
visceral
power.
kind of connection power for a lot of people, because
Yeah.
generationally it wasn't theirs.
Mhm.
And then, but when I went to Afghanistan and performed for the troops there in 2006 at Christmas, and spent some time there, and coming and talking to a lot of them about why they were there. What they all would A lot of them would ask me, what did they think back home, like what do they think of us being over here, and what are people saying, and
Mhm.
things like that. And boy, did I ever feel a connection to it after that trip.
Yeah.
And then after this moment with this whole, freedom convoy and everything as well. But then when I mean, I wrote a book. I got so ticked off about
Yeah.
how dare
Right.
you,
Right.
and which is a very Canadian thing to do, like having a leaf on your flag,
Put the
right?
flag on the cover with a moose.
The
Exactly.
flag's on the cover with a moose. I mean, it's ridiculous at a certain point. But I think a lot of Canadians feel this way now. And I think for the first time in a long time, we see the country as a whole, not as a group of different provinces. And we can see, like, there's a lot of difference, say, between Quebec and Alberta. And there's a lot of difference between BC and Newfoundland. There's a lot of difference between Saskatchewan and Nunavut.
Mhm.
But I think now we can see it's like, okay, yeah, that's true, but we're all the same. We're at the same table. And this is who we are. This is our family, and we're going to defend this. And yeah, so now I see the flag everywhere now.
Yeah.
And I don't, before I go like, oh, this guy's going to yell at me for being on the CBC, when I
Mhm.
when I would see it, because that did happen. If I saw an F-150 drop by with a flag on it, I go, here we go. But now I'm like, I hear the old bam, bam,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and
Right.
it's great.
Nice. Nice to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brought us all together. I agree. I think Trump has done something that few have achieved and brought Canada together like never before. So
Oh, never before. And you know what? I think people always say there'd finally be peace on Earth and an end to racism if they ever discovered aliens, because
yeah.
everyone be afraid of all these green
Sure.
people from Mars, and then all of a sudden everyone come together and see themselves as human. And
Yeah.
I think it took this threat, and not only the threat,
Alien. Yeah.
yeah, but this threat from this orange alien,
Exactly.
to it's not even just so much a threat of our sovereignty, but also the dismissal of us.
Yeah.
I think that the dismissal, as much as the threat, I think, got people's backs up. And yeah, it's a lovely thing to see.
Great. Good. Back to you,
You,
Pam.
you mentioned dinner, and in your book, there's a chapter about the provinces having dinner together.
Yeah.
Uh, it should be taught in schools as a way to understand federalism and the dynamics. Could you maybe share a little bit of that with us, Mark?
Yeah, so it's a scene in which there's a couple of scenes. There's one with Canada and Quebec going for a marriage counseling to try and stay together, and there's another one with all the province and territories sitting around, and they're some people want to hold on to their meals, and some people want to trade them, but people are like, oh, I want what he's having, he can't have what I have. And there's a lot of this kind of like a family kind of fighting over the meals, and some people have very special dietary restrictions. And it's amazing, just trying to make each province a character. And poor old Alberta having to cover the bill all the time. But yeah, so it's just a way of kind of like taking this giant thing and making it a little bit smaller, so you can there's a lot of truth and humor sometimes, and sometimes you can dumb things down to explain them in a very simple way, and when it comes down to, it comes down to the economics of having a country, but sometimes it comes down a lot to character and personality. And I think a lot of times our provinces will have kind of a like in Newfoundland and Labrador, like sometimes you'll be like, oh, the people, oh, the O'Connells, we don't talk to them. It's like, why not? I can't remember, but I mean, that goes back to your great grandfather's time. There's these things that are almost it's just the way it's always been. And I think hopefully in this day now we start passing around the potatoes a bit more.
Well, it's a nice way to, you can have the family fights, but at the end of the day, you're still a family, and
Yeah,
we're really, really pulling together. I know when I visited Newfoundland with my dad, I couldn't get over the predominance of Newfoundland culture. We had visited Bell Island and wanted to get a book about the German U-boat attack on
yeah,
Bell Island, and the woman at the gift shop said, "Well, we don't have any here, but check out the Newfoundland chapter or Newfoundland section in the chapter store." And I remember looking at my dad going, "I know there's no Ontario section of chapters in my home province, right? Like there's so much pride in
Yeah.
and history in Newfoundland that I think a lot of Canadians don't know, to be honest with you. The Battle of Beaumont Hamel, that was there's much reason for you to be proud of
Yeah.
being a proud Newfoundlander. But people in Newfoundland are genuinely funny.
yeah.
And I like and good musicians too.
Oh, yeah.
Where does that all come from?
It comes from a sense of community, I think, because like Newfoundland looks like this, right? There's St. Anthony is here, and St. John's is here, Corner Brook is here. So, but the whole place is all these little communities, kind of not much in the middle, but it's all founded for the fishery. And so people would come over and then they try and fish and get their own fishing grounds as far away from the other people's fishing grounds because you want to have your own spot. And that meant that people were pretty isolated. And that meant if something happened, you had to depend on each other. If a house burned down, well, you had to build your neighbor's house back up. And if someone had a bad year and they didn't have enough supplies for the year, you had to help them because you're going to need their help. And you had to entertain each other. So people quickly learned to play music, to make a joke, to do a recitation, which is kind of like a long poem. Everybody had to do something, and that's the way it's always been. There was an oral history, which was great storytelling, like recitations and songs, and it's and also it's like a lot of that Irish and parts of England, like Dartmouth and Devon, and that comes with that great tradition as well. So it's from entertaining each other and depending on each other, and also I think it's as Canadians are very good comedians in North America because they're a step away from Canada, America, and they can look over the fence and comment on it being a step back. Yeah. Newfoundlanders are kind of like that with Canada in that we came to the party a bit late. We're on a little island off to ourselves. So you might get a myself or a Mercer or a Rex Murphy or people who kind of go like, kind of weird what they're doing over next door, isn't it? So you're a little bit back. And you also get that Canadians are very polite. And I think Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, because there's been so much, tragedy and loss to sea and all that stuff, you kind of have a darker sense of humor, a more acerbic sense of humor, because sometimes making a joke in a dark situation is a reminder that you'll get through it,
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes there's a bit of a wink and a nod, even in tough times. And I think that leads into a certain style of humor too, which ends up with shows like 22 Minutes and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, in a funny province, you're the funniest of all, Mark. So I
Oh,
think
you're too kind.
amazing. I'll give you my final question. Then I'll turn it back to Mark.
Sure.
You mentioned the chapter you wrote on monuments there, and I know I have to get the audio copy of the book now because I have to hear the Johnny McDonald in a box routine done in her voice. That's the only way it's going to be done. But this whole idea of reassessing the history of some of our prominent people, the people that we put on pedestals. John A. is literally in a box, I think, outside the Queen's Park right now, and Doug Ford has offered to liberate him. I'm sort of the opinion that you should, rather than tear down the statues, amend the plaque and
Yeah.
talk about the good and the bad of the people. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about how, modernism can meet some of these people that are, less than perfect by today's standards, and how we can learn from them and maybe learn from their mistakes as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the whole idea of monuments and whatnot.
Well, it's interesting because, like, times change, people change,
Yeah,
societies evolve, and stuff
yeah,
like that. And the thing about history, problematic thing about it is that a lot of it happened in the past,
it
you
did.
know.
It
And I look to like Mr. Churchill in the United Kingdom,
Mhm.
and there was lots of calls during that time as well to take down a lot of his statues and things like that for
Yeah.
things he had said about India and whatnot. And you do have to take a step out and look at people um, with context of their own time. And as you say, amending the plaque is a very
Yeah.
important thing to do. But we can't erase our history. I mean,
Mhm.
we are here because of where we've been, and um, we this. I think we went through a time where there was a lot of anger,
Yeah.
and there you need to let some steam out of that kettle. And I think that the taking down of these statues, the boxing up, was a great way of doing that.
Mhm.
And I think you had to let that happen, not unlike the convoy with the flag and things like
Yeah.
that. There will be time to let some steam out of a kettle. But as these moments pass, and I think we can learn from those moments. And then I think what's important is for a lot of Canadians who hadn't thought about it now can look at that and go, okay, well, there's something here. There's a problem here that we should address. And maybe I should learn a bit more about this too. And as you say, amending that plaque, and not just amending the plaque to the ones that are there, but also putting up monuments
Forward.
and statues to other people that we would never have thought of doing at the
Different
time.
voices. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
different voices and telling an honest history, which includes the good and the bad. It will be an interesting thing because the next generation is going to demand that.
Yeah,
But I think, yeah, erasing history is just a fool's errand because then you start to repeat those mistakes.
that's right. Yeah, they're no perfect people. Yeah.
No,
Pam, I'll throw it back to you. Go ahead, please.
Well, I have to ask you about Come From Away because it was
yeah,
born here in Oakville, Ontario at
yeah,
Sheridan College.
yeah.
And so, I mean, I've seen it from when it was workshopped through to the opening in Toronto, Broadway, and I know it's driving tourism to Newfoundland from all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Where people want to come and see, is it really true that you could just take barbecues from other people's backyards and
Yeah.
and have not be shot? And what impact has that had in Newfoundland and for Canada? Because I mean, I was really proud to be at on Broadway, and the Prime Minister at the time, Justin Trudeau, brought Ivanka Trump to see it.
I was at
Um,
that show. I was
were
at
you?
that
Yeah,
show. Yeah.
yeah.
He was on stage and he actually said, we have a lot of, he was doing a speech at the start and he said, we have gathered a lot of, very important and wonderful Newfoundlanders and Labradorians here today. Not you, Critch, he said. And everyone
That's
laughed.
right.
Yeah. That
Get
was
down.
nice. Well, yeah, Ivanka was a couple of seats behind me, sitting next to Jean Chrétien. And I thought, uh-oh,
Yeah.
this could go sideways
Good.
very
Good.
quickly.
Good. Good.
Don't tell him who her father. Don't say who her father is.
No.
But yeah, no, it's been a wonderful thing, and it's interesting with Broadway. One of the great impresarios of Broadway was a guy, John Murray Anderson, who there was a show called the Ziegfeld Follies. Well, after Mr. Ziegfeld, he took that over, and he was one of the great impresarios of Broadway for decades. And people don't really know he's this guy from Newfoundland. A great book about him by his brother called Out Without My Rubbers, because he got sick when he went out without his rubber boots on as a child. And then he started reading about Broadway and things like that and put the bug in his ear. But anyway, so there's a bit of a history there. But for this to put Newfoundland Labrador on the map in such a way, because it's not just that story, but at the time, the idea, it was so close to the event that the idea of doing I remember being in New York and saying, I'm from a place called Newfoundland to a couple of people. And they're like, okay. And I said, actually, there's a Broadway musical opening up about us and 9/11. And the look on their face when that was said, before it came out, the idea of doing
Mhm.
a musical about 9/11, they were just aghast. But, it's one of those beautiful moments of look for the helpers, when a bad thing happens. And yeah, no, people come, it's how people know the province, certainly, in many ways. And it's a great calling card to have out there. And I think that, that's often what Newfoundlanders, Labradorians do. People do ask me, are they really like that? And I'm like, yeah, like
Yeah.
I think a lot of Canadians are like that too. I don't think it's a peculiarly Newfoundland Labrador thing, but that comes from, as I was saying earlier, coming from those small places where you rely on each other to get through a winter is kind of bred in you that you have to help someone because there's no one else to help them. And that's a great thing about this place. And it's a great reminder, I think, too. One thing that I get mad about some of this Trump stuff, but one thing that makes me a bit, disappointed is that. And also the over 100, Canadians who died in Afghanistan and things about being a neighbor. And they can learn a lesson or two from that is that we've always been there for them. And they're going to need us to be there again, no matter how small and insignificant Mr. Trump thinks we are. There will come a time when something is going to happen. It's going to rely on the neighbors next door. Now, we'll be there for them, but I hope we're a little bit snippy when we are. And we go up their moms. Oh, you need us now, do you? Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You need us now. I think we should lean into it a bit. But yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing to have that celebrated and have that story told. And I love the pride too on the real people whose stories are told because they've been very active and see them light up time and again. And you know what's amazing? It's a blessing and a curse. But I know some of these folks time and again are called upon to go to the shows or whenever people are in town, they want to meet them and stuff. So, but they've all been so lovely and welcoming to everyone. And now the show is being produced in Gander, the town in which it happened.
Yeah, good.
So it's a great thing.
And they are very generous with their time and they're so kind. And I remember talking to the mayor of Gander about, what happened. And he said, you can have an emergency management plan. You could never plan for this, but it wasn't anything that the city of Gander did. It was what the residents of Gander and Appledorn and the surrounding communities, because no emergency management plan would have worked without the people in the community stepping up the way that they did. So, so your book ends on Canada Day.
Yep.
That's the last chapter. Are you optimistic about our country moving forward?
Oh God, yes. Yeah. More so than ever before. I mean, I think that getting down some of these trade barriers, which have always been a problem, I think I think an interesting thing for politicians too is, politicians have their plans and their visions and of course for the constituents, but also for themselves and their own careers. And something like this comes along, kind of pulls the rug out from everybody. And there are times in history when our leaders are faced with a situation where not like we could do or we should do, but we better, because if we don't, they're going to come for us pretty quick. Like the whole country is saying, now by the Jesus, go get this done, and do something about this. So you can't really play too many games after a while. You got to do something, and it will be a long game and it'll take a while, but to see them working, they're going to work together. It'll be a great photo op and then it'll fall apart. And they'll work together. It'll be a great photo op and then it'll fall apart. And then eventually, I think the working together, hopefully, will become the norm. And when that happens, and it'll be difficult, there'll be a lot of growing pains, but I think we're going to come out with a stronger Canada with more interesting trade partners. And I think we should leave our friends down south to look at us and say, hey, do you want to get together tonight? Oh, I can't. Myself and Sweden are looking at jets. Oh, really? But we got jets. What about the? No. You know what? We're good. We're just going to take a ride in this jet. No, we're going to. I think we need. The more we do that, the better off we'll be.
Need to play hard to get a bit more.
Play hard to get. That's right. Leave their texts on red and don't pick up the phone.
Well, and unfortunately, as Canadians, we're far too humble about our own accomplishments. The Special Olympics was dreamed up by a Canadian, Dr. Frank Hayden. People think it was the Kennedys, who certainly helped, but if it hadn't been for Dr. Frank, we wouldn't have the Special Olympics. We've got Terry Fox. We've got some of the smartest researchers in the world doing their work here in Canada. We've got, I think, the best comedians in the world here in Canada, and some of the best TV shows. So I think we need to. I don't think it hurts for us to, pump up our chests and say, this is a good thing. Canada isn't. We don't have to stand behind anybody when it comes to some of these things that we accomplish, you
Well,
know?
which is why I love that Son of a Critch is now on Netflix and it can be enjoyed by
Yeah.
an audience around the world. I grew up in the 80s and 90s too. I didn't grow up in Newfoundland, but boy, there's a lot of my life in that show too. And I bet a
Yeah.
lot of people around the world feel that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the too. I think for a long time, Canadians kind of felt like their TV shows, they had to try and make it seem like it could have been shot in America,
Yeah.
with the industry.
Yeah.
I didn't want any of that. Like, because I was growing up, I always thought, well, I didn't grow up in New York, and I don't know, I've never been to the Bronx, but I get the idea, you
Yeah.
know. And I think, and they'll figure out what Jig's dinner and how are you getting on means. Like they'll understand that, especially now in this world with so many shows from all around the world all the time. But yeah, that's been great, and I've been hearing great things from folks in the States. I get all kinds of wonderful comments from people, and oftentimes with by the way, we're very sorry. That's not us, kind of a
Yeah.
thing with their comments. So we've got pretty good neighbors next door, I must say. And I think maybe we should just pull a FIFA, and have Mr. Trump up here and give him a parade and let him
Sure.
speak in the House of Commons and give him the Canadian Award for Extreme Excellence in Neighborly Presidentary
Yeah.
excellence, or something. Make something up and give him the Sword of the South, or the Sword of
Sure.
the North, or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
and let him have it and do the whole thing. And everybody, now we're not going to have any protests, guys. We're not going to do
Yeah.
anything.
Be
The
nice.
snowbirds fly over, get Michael Bublé to sing a song, and see what happens.
Yep.
Because I'm pretty sure if we elect him, Canadian Pope or something, and let him off on his way with a big gold plate, this might all go away very quickly,
Well, and as your book points out, he's kind of earned it. Like he's brought us together like no one else has.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I could give him the Order of Canada, the first non-Canadian to get
okay.
the Order of Canada.
Yeah, I can get behind that. That's great.
Well,
Uh,
listen, Mark, thanks a million, eh?
yeah,
Oh,
great.
thank you. It's
The
such
book
a
is
joy to see.
great, like great Christmas gift for your family and
Yeah,
friends. And
very nice.
yeah, I've already bought a couple copies to
Oh,
give as
bless your
gifts.
heart.
So yeah, yeah.
Me too. So, and again, wonderful to see that you're as successful as an author as you are as an actor. And
Well, you've both been very kind. I really appreciate that, and all the great work the Pearson Center does.
thank you.
It's just a joy to be here chatting with you folks today.
Well, and I think you should be able to charge the government for like therapy for the nation for like you've examined our neuroses and like a psychoanalysis in the book, and so they owe you royalties for the work you've
No,
done.
universal health care. We're all in
Okay,
it
okay,
together.
all good. Well, maybe I'll just end off then by thanking our sustaining sponsors again: AMAPSIO, Ontario's professional employees, CBTU, the NWMO, TikTok Canada, the Cannabis Council of Canada, Bruce Power, Sandstone Group, Faskins, and National News Watch, North Star. But let me thank you, Mark, for not only taking the time to talk with us here at the Pearson Podcast, but for everything you do to make this a better country every day. So thank you very much for taking the time with us today.
So appreciative. Thank you so much, both of you.
Here,
Great.
here.